Hi and welcome back to my new video. As you saw from the title, today I'm going to talk about my English learning journey. I'm going to give you an overview of my general timeline, the education that I received and what I did outside of my English classes. I'm also going to reflect a little bit on what I think certain activities did for my English and how I think it changed over time. For those of you who don't know, I was born and raised in Germany in a German monolingual household, so German is my native language, and I started having English classes at the age of 9 in 4th grade, so I've been learning English for 13 years now. Okay, let me walk you through my timeline then. As I just said, I started learning English in 4th grade. I remember we only had like 1 hour of English per week, and we would be taught very basic vocabulary such as colors, animals, rooms of the house, and probably some basic greetings. Most of the class was conducted in German though, so my understanding, speaking, and just generally was not good at all after that year of learning. This became a problem very quickly because as I entered secondary school, which in Germany starts in 5th grade, so when I was 10 years old, we had English class about 3 hours every week, and our teacher would speak only in English. I would constantly have to ask my classmates what we were supposed to do when the teacher explained something. I have this one very vivid memory of us sitting in class, that must have been pretty early on to be honest, where we were supposed to fill in the gaps, as in we were supposed to write he, she, or it in the gaps, and I could not figure out what the difference between he, she, and it was, even though we have the exact same concept in German. The result was that I felt pretty stupid, I did not understand how it worked, and I started crying in class. And that then again resulted in me not really caring about my English classes. I just wanted to pass. I did not care about my grades, and I did not really care about learning anything. That mindset continued for about 4 years. I think up until like 9th grade, I did not really care about my English classes. I just wanted to get through them somehow, did the bare minimum to pass my tests. I would study a little more before tests, do my homework and stuff, and pay attention in class, but I didn't do any extra studying outside of class. Or at least that's what I thought. Because in 6th grade, so when I turned 11 years old, I would start playing an online game that was all in English. All the quests were in English, all the people on there were in English, and so naturally I had to somehow communicate with those people. In the beginning it was super hard, and I tried to find other German players so that they could help me progress in the game, but obviously I couldn't always find Germans, and so I would try to look things up and translate them with Google Translate. That is how I got through like the first year of talking to people. I just Google translated pretty much everything they said, typed my answer in German, and then would transfer that to the game. It's all a little hazy now, so I don't remember the exact timeline, but my Google Translate strategy must have worked pretty well, and with time I learned to communicate with people a little better. Obviously my English classes also still continued, so I still had that forced exposure and grammar study going on throughout the years. But then 2 years into that Google Translate strategies, after about 4 years of English education, I started dating someone, a guy from New Zealand, and so obviously we would talk a lot, mainly about the game obviously since we played that together, and we would also chat every once in a while outside of the game. We didn't have our first voice call until like half a year later, and I remember it was just horrible. I could not bring out a single word, I couldn't come up with anything to say, and so I pretty much just hung up and started to cry. It was especially frustrating because I knew how to chat with people, I knew how to tell people what I needed, what I wanted, get my point across, but I couldn't say them, like I couldn't put it into words. We decided to just try again, and in the beginning I'm pretty sure our conversations were pretty limited, very basic, and we didn't talk about much because obviously I wasn't used to the spoken language. The year after that, in 9th grade, so after about 5 years of English education, I would also start talking to other people from the game, and for a while, a couple months or so, We would talk pretty much every single day. In the beginning, I remember hearing my name, but I couldn't figure out what else they were saying. And while it was really frustrating and annoying in the beginning, my listening comprehension and spoken English got slowly, very slowly, a lot better. In the following years, I would continue my English classes. I would still occasionally talk to those friends from the game. I would still play the game a lot, so I still got my chatting practice. And I would obviously still talk to my boyfriend at the time. So over the course of, I would say, 1 to 2 years, I got a lot of listening and speaking practice with native speakers, which led to me getting way better at English than my classmates, and that resulted in me getting really good in my English classes. A year later, in 11th grade, I decided to take advanced English classes, which are just a little faster paced. We learn more stuff. We were required to read native literature. We learned some very basic linguistics, and we got a lot of grammar drills, which is, I think, where my pretty solid grammar foundation in English came from. That same year, I kind of stopped playing the game. I would still play occasionally, but nowhere near as much as I used to. I would also break up with the guy that I had been dating for 3 years at that point, and I continued into 12th grade, still with my advanced English classes, still talking to the friends that I had made on that game, and still constantly improving my English. So then I graduated a year later in summer 2017, and at that point I thought my English was actually pretty good. But now looking back, I think it was decent, but it was nowhere near as good as it is now. But because over the years I had acquired a lot of knowledge, I felt very confident in my English, and I didn't really know what else to do. I decided to choose English studies as my second subject in university. So 2017, I started uni Japanese and English studies, and for my English studies courses, all my classes were in English. Over the years, I obviously had a lot of classes on linguistics, on literature, on cultural studies, but there were 3 classes that I think in the first year were super helpful and helped me improve my English so much. Those classes are a linguistic introductory class, which I thought was great for teaching me the basics of how languages work as a system. The second class was called Sounds and Sound Systems, and we learned the IPA, which to this day I'm so grateful I learned that. It is such an advantage. You can just look up any word and know exactly how it's supposed to be said. And in that class, I actually fixed a lot of my minor pronunciation issues that I still had at the time. I just became more aware of how the language worked, how it's supposed to sound, and I can now very closely listen to differences and different accents, dialects that I can copy from other speakers. The last class was a grammar class. We were drilled with grammar. It was insane. There are so many subtle nuances that I wasn't even aware of, and the class was geared towards German native speakers, so all the mistakes that German native speakers tend to make in English were mentioned there. Those 3 classes sent a really strong foundation for my English. I managed to fix a lot of mistakes during that time, and that was one of the times when I felt my English improved a lot in a very short amount of time. Fast forward, for my other classes, I obviously had to read a lot of literature, research articles, and just in general a lot of academic material, with which I managed to expand my vocabulary a little bit, but I was still fairly limited outside of the fields that I knew. 2 years later, fall 2019, I went on my exchange year to Japan. This was important because in Japan was the first time that I had to use English as my main language of communication in real life. Up to that point, the only people I'd ever talked to in English was friends from the internet. So Japan really was the first time in my life that I had to use English as my main means of communication. There's just something different about communicating with someone in real life. That was another time I felt my English improved a lot in a very short amount of time just because I spoke English so much. Then a more recent development in fall 2020, I came back to Germany obviously, and I met another group of people online that for a while, I would say pretty much all throughout fall, we would talk almost every day. Because I would generally say that at that point in time I was already fluent, I learned a lot about communication in English. Not about the language itself, but how the language is used in interaction. I could pay more attention to how people phrase certain things, how people bring across certain ideas, and how people argue or how conversations are built. Then even more recently, last year in spring of 2021, I started dating my boyfriend, who is a native English speaker from the US, and suddenly I would obviously get a lot more exposure again because we would talk every single day about a lot of different topics. Over the summer, I would improve my English a lot, my vocabulary grew, and my thinking in English got a lot faster as well. I'm way better at reacting to spontaneous speech now, and I can just very quickly figure out what I want to say, how I want to say it. And that is where we are currently at. My English is the most fluent it has ever been. I think I can now think the fastest in English I have ever been able to think, but there are obviously still things that I can't really do or haven't done yet in English. But, I think you can never really finish a language. You can reach a point to where it's really, really easy and it comes to you very naturally, but I don't think there is ever a point where you can stop learning. Even in your native language, you essentially never stop learning. You just reach a degree of comfort that is so comfortable that it essentially feels like no effort. I have not reached that point yet in English, but I hope to be improving more and I will try my best, and we will see where that brings me. And that is everything that I have to share. If you have any questions about anything specifically in my journey, then feel free to ask in the comments. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video.